It's getting spooky. Democrats haunted by the echoes of Hillary Clinton. That's from Politico. Kamala went from being the next Obama to being Hillary. They're worried she's running the same play it safe campaign. Up to this point, she's had about the same number of events as Hillary, and Crooked had pneumonia. Since the DNC, Kamala's spent half of her time in D.C., a third of it without any public appearances. Trump is everywhere. Anxious Dems wonder why Harris isn't. Kamala's been a ghost, and even Vegas is spooked. Trump's up by 7 points in the betting markets. Look at that. And CNN is gearing up for a horror show.
What happens if the polls are slightly off? Remember, back in 2020, the polls underestimated Donald Trump. So what happens if we have a similar error across those key battleground states? Well, if that happens again, look at this. Donald Trump carries all of these Great Lake battleground states. He carries Nevada as well. Of course, he carries Arizona, Georgia, and North Carolina. And he gets to get this. 312 electoral votes. So the bottom line is, if we have an error like we did 4 years ago, Donald Trump is going to win this election. Kamala Harris is going to lose.
Joy turning into dread. Even Saturday night feels it. Watch.
Okay, he's out there. He's doing his thing, whatever that may be.
Okay, come on, just relax. You know, you haven't had a night off in 3 months. Do you want to watch something less stressful like the Menendez Brothers show?
I don't know, Dougie. I kind of wish I had picked Josh right now.
Oh, Josh Shapiro?
No, Josh. Cabernet.
Look, Tim'll be fine. It's not like he's going to say something crazy.
I've become friends with school shooters.
Obama world doesn't find it funny. Remember, Kamala was his idea. David Axelrod says Harris needs to step it up. It's only the most difficult oral exam on the planet for the most difficult job. So Obama's ordering Harris to do more interviews. And the last time a Democrat didn't listen to Obama, they got cooed. So Harris began a media blitz this week. This is how 60 Minutes went.
It seems that Prime Minister Netanyahu is not listening.
Well, Bill, the work that we have done has resulted in a number of movements in that region by Israel that were very much prompted by or a result of many things, including our advocacy for what needs to happen in the region.
I don't know what she just said there. Even 60 Minutes told her she's not living in the real world.
My plan is about saying that when you invest in small businesses, you invest in the middle class, and you strengthen America's economy. Small businesses are part of the backbone of America's economy.
But pardon me, Madam Vice President, the question was, how are you going to pay for it?
Well, one of the things is I'm going to make sure that the richest among us who can afford it pay their fair share in taxes.
But we're dealing with the real world here.
But the real world includes...
How are you going to get this through Congress?
You know, when you talk quietly with a lot of folks in Congress, they know exactly what I'm talking about.
No one knows what she's talking about. Does Kamala even know what she's talking about? She was on the Call Her Daddy podcast, and she doesn't even understand her own plans.
Another thing that I'm really focused on is small businesses and startups, and giving startups a $50,000 tax deduction, because right now it's $5,000 and you can't start up anything, any small business with $5,000.
Does Kamala not know what a tax deduction is? She thinks she's giving small business startups 50 grand. She doesn't know the difference between a tax deduction and a handout. Kamala's also never heard of the draft.
I want to pose this question more to you and the Daddy Gang, but one of the biggest conversations in this year's election revolves around a woman's body.
Yep.
I want to take a moment, and can we try to think of any law that gives the government the power to make a decision.
I know what you're going to ask.
About a man's body. Let's
No.
Is there any law?
No. It's no.
Besides the draft, maybe vax mandates. Even Andrea Mitchell admits people are realizing she's a lightweight.
think they've got to double down on doing more interviews and serious interviews. She's got such a big problem with men. I think there's an undercount of the Trump vote. I think there is misogynation in all of this, black and white men. Big problem, but also the business world. They don't think she is serious. They don't think she's a heavyweight.
Kamala's doing Colbert tomorrow, a guy who held a fundraiser for the Biden-Harris campaign. Then she's doing The View, another love fest, and then Howard Stern. The last Democrat nominee who went on Stern dropped out. These are all safe spaces that make her look like she's getting out there, but she's just hiding in plain sight. We're in 2 proxy wars, the border's wide open, prices in crime are high, and she's doing frivolous sit-downs with friends. NBC says most of these sit-downs are just for the vibes. But the vibes are scary. The Democrat Party is being haunted by Hillary's ghost, and Kamala keeps seeing Biden's. Joe won't stop bigfooting her and bragging about how close they were.
President Biden just keeps tying her to his administration.
Yes, I can tell you that that was a surprise to the Harris campaign. They found out just a few minutes before that the president would be doing that. A lot of Harris aides did not find that to be helpful. They do not want Joe Biden to be popping up in that way. They also don't love the idea of him reminding people of their strong connection.
How dare the Biden tie Harris to the Biden-Harris administration? Doesn't he know how unpopular they are? It's like Kamala inherited all of his money and now wants nothing to do with them. But Biden keeps haunting her from his grave. He's insisting on campaigning for her in Pennsylvania and Wisconsin. And the Harris campaign's like, you know, Joe, you don't really have to do that. It's okay. And Biden says, no, it's my pleasure. And after I campaign for you and remind everybody how you co-signed my agenda, I'm going to Africa. Joe Biden in Africa is going to attract a lot of attention. Biden stumbling across the Serengeti maybe isn't the kind of thing the Harris campaign's looking forward to. Biden on an African safari while the Southeast is under water, drowning in hurricanes, no good. A month before the election, Harris is trying to erase herself from the Biden-Harris administration and completely change her media strategy. Now, ask any political professional if pulling a 180 in the final stretch is a good tactic. That's not what you do when you're ahead. That's what you do when you're down and you're scrambling for something that sticks.
And welcome to Hannity and a busy news night. Tonight, the Gulf Coast of Florida bracing for yet another massive hurricane. Now a Cat 5 barreling again towards the Tampa area and the west coast of Florida. Governor Ron DeSantis, he will join us more on the important hurricane prep that is now underway. Unlike Kamala and Joe, they actually stage 30,000 utility vehicles and water and food and medicine and supplies, something that Kamala and Joe can learn from. And tonight, Governor DeSantis will respond to Kamala Harris politicizing this hurricane. Also, our very own Sarah Carter. She is in the toughest areas hit in North Carolina with Hurricane Helene, struggling to recover. In North Carolina, 11 days after. We're going to check in with those victims. They do have a message for Kamala and Joe. That's straight ahead tonight. And also tonight, 97 hostages, including 4 Americans, remain somewhere in Gaza. 1 year after the October 7th terror attack on Israel. It's now a 4-front war against Israel. 1,200 people brutally murdered by Hamas, others raped and kidnapped and tortured and beheaded. And by the way, including women and young children. Adjusted for population, what happened 1 year ago today, that is the equivalent of 40,000 Americans killed in a single day. Will somebody tell Joe and Kamala? Anyway, but during one of her famous word salads, Kamala Harris couldn't bring herself to even back the Israeli prime minister, the only democracy in the region, our biggest ally in the region, and his war against radical Islamic terrorists that are still holding Americans hostage. Watch this.
Do we have a real close ally in Prime Minister Netanyahu?
I think, with all due respect, the better question is, do we have an important alliance between the American people and the Israeli people? And the answer to that question is yes.
Yeah, unfortunately, we'll have much more of Kamala's disastrous CBS interview straight ahead. And get this, after weeks and weeks and 70-plus days of hiding from even her closest friends in the state-run media mob, Kamala Harris now all of a sudden is going to participate in a number of interviews this week. They're all really hard-hitting. Now, every one of these, well, there'll be infomercials, friendly interviews. Let's see, CBS, the ladies of The View, the sadly, newly, extremely woke Howard Stern, the guy that now thinks that every Trump supporter is stupid. The only thing that would make you stupid is if you were a Howard Stern fan and you still listen to him at this point. If he thinks you're stupid, why would you listen to him? And a podcast named Call Her Daddy. That's a big one. And Stephen Colbert, who loves to kiss her ass. Now, take a look at your screen. These outlets are never going to ask, any of these people never ask the questions about her radical, extreme, and frankly dangerous record and her failures in office. There will be no real vetting of Kamala, no real questions in any of these appearances, none whatsoever. I hate Donald Trump. I hate Donald Trump more. Do you hate Donald Trump? Yeah, I hate Donald Trump. Do you hate Donald Trump? That's what the interviews will be. Make no mistake, there is one huge reason, and only one reason, that Kamala is now going on and doing any interviews. Her internal poll numbers have got to be horrendous. Now, meanwhile, the publicly available poll numbers from the most credible pollsters in 2016 and 2020 in swing states, we've been showing you, they're not great for Kamala Harris. She is down in multiple polls in Arizona, Nevada, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, and Georgia. The race is even tight in Virginia, where Kamala holds a slight lead. A brand new Yahoo News poll shows Trump surging nationwide. They have a general election right now. That's the overall election, not any particular state, tied at 47-47. Poly market, in other words, the betting markets, they track betting odds. They had Trump down for weeks and weeks. Now Trump is at an all-time high in Pennsylvania and close to an all-time high nationwide. His lead is up to 8.6%. Rasmussen found only 34% of our country believe the country is headed in the right direction under Harris-Biden. It is even lower in a recent NBC poll at 28%. And now it appears that with just 29 days until Election Day, early voting now in many states going on as a public service, that is available on Hannity.com, how to register, when early voting starts and stops. Harris is desperately trying to make up ground. That's why she's finally doing friendly interviews. But, lapping it up with, Trump hater Howard Stern, those hard-hitting, interviewers on The View, and Stephen Colbert, who's dull as dirt, or the Call Me Daddy podcast, while millions of Americans are suffering the devastating effects of Hurricane Helene and another major hurricane on the way, is, well, not exactly the best look for the vice president when she and Joe Biden have been completely missing in action. In fact, it's downright heartless. Take a look.
Made you want to do Call Her Daddy today?
Well, I think you and your listeners have really got this.
We shouldn't have been there. None of us should have been there.
Communicate with people is to be real.
And she was giggling a lot during the podcast. We don't know the truth about the death toll in North Carolina, Georgia, South Carolina, Tennessee, Florida. We don't know yet. All these Americans have been abandoned. She's doing Howard Stern, Colbert, The View, and Call Me Daddy. Supplies haven't been delivered. They're now being delivered by neighbors and Samaritan's Purse, in some cases by horse and by mule. Joe is out there just flat out lying. Joe Biden said on Friday, everything that people need, they got everything that they need and everybody is happy. Not true. Take a look.
What do the states in the storm zone need, Mr. President?
Okay?
What do the states in the storm zone, what do they need after what you saw today?
Oh, in the storm zone?
Yes, sir.
I'm wondering what storm you're talking about. They're getting everything they need. And they're very happy across the board.
They're getting everything they need. They're very happy. Federal rescue operations have been slow. They have been disjointed, nearly non-existent. According to Biden's DHS secretary, FEMA, he's saying, is out of money after the Emergency Management Agency spent $1 billion of your dollars to feed and house Harris, Biden, unvetted illegal immigrants. Border czar Kamala Harris all on board for that. And meanwhile, the top two stated priorities of FEMA are diversity, equity and inclusion, and climate change. Okay, I think their priorities are screwed up. You would think that the emergency management would be the top of the list and helping every American in need. You'd think they would have the money available, especially in light of how much money they give all these other countries, but not under Kamala's so-called leadership. And today, Kamala was most focused on trashing Donald Trump and Ron DeSantis for daring to criticize the administration's response. Take a look at this.
The other point I'd make is that there's a lot of mis and disinformation being pushed out there by the former president about what is available, in particular to the survivors of Helene. And first of all, it's extraordinarily irresponsible. It's about him. It's not about you. And the reality is that FEMA has so many resources that are available to folks who desperately need them.
Kamala, you've been MIA. Joe's been MIA. You're lying and saying everybody's fine, everybody's been taken care of, and everybody's happy. Mayorkas says you're bankrupt. FEMA's website said you gave $1 billion to your illegal immigrants. You're not doing your job by going on the, Call Me Daddy website. Only about $4 million, that's it, was dispensed from FEMA, and it took them a week to show up. Thousands upon thousands of Americans have lost absolutely everything. They're using horses and mules, but not helicopters and government planes and our military. Entire towns washed away, roads, highways, bridges. They are closed indefinitely. Power, clean drinking water, still in short supply. The level of suffering has been immense, and you have done nothing. And here is what Kamala was posting on X 2 days ago. Look at this, quote, "The people of Lebanon are facing an increasingly dire humanitarian situation. I am concerned about the security and well-being of civilians suffering in Lebanon, and will continue working to help meet the needs of all civilians in Lebanon. But to that end, the U.S. will provide nearly $157 million in additional assistance to the people of Lebanon for essential needs, food, shelter, water, protection, sanitation, to help those who have been displaced by the recent conflict. This additional support brings total U.S. assistance to Lebanon over last year to over $385 million. Give it to North Carolina and Georgia. Hundreds of millions of Americans suffering. You're telling us about Lebanon? What about the suffering Americans in our country? Those states impacted by Hurricane Helene. What about the people there? Our very own Peter Ducey had an opportunity to ask Corinne Jean-Pierre about this earlier today. She didn't like the question. Peter's 1,000% right. Take a look.
On this issue of funding, the administration has money to send to Lebanon without Congress coming back. But Congress does have to come back to approve money to send to people in North Carolina. Do I have that right?
Here's what I'm going to be very clear about. The president and the vice president has had a robust whole of government response to this.
President Biden is fond of saying, show me your budget and I will tell you what you value. If he's got money for people in Lebanon right now, without Congress having to come back, what does it say about his values? There's not enough money right now for
His
people
values,
in North Carolina who need it. That's not misinformation.
Wait, no, that is your whole premise of the question is misinformation, sir. What you do? Yes, it's misinformation.
Joe said everybody's needs are taken care of and they're happy. That's misinformation. No money for the Southeast, hundreds of millions for Lebanon. Last week, Biden pledged another $3 billion, actually it was $8 billion to Ukraine. Each U.S. taxpayer, on top of the is sending more than, taxpayers more than $12 billion to Ukraine. On top of the nearly 200 total, Ethiopia gets more than $2 billion. The Taliban gets $1.3 billion. Another $1.3 billion for Yemen. More than $1 billion went to Egypt, Jordan, Nigeria, Somalia, South Sudan, and I can keep going. The U.S. spent a whopping $18 billion on the anti-American, anti-Semitic UN, along with $850 million for the corrupt WHO that was the propaganda wing for the communist Chinese during COVID, and millions more for the globalist World Economic Forum. But FEMA's out of money, Mayorkas says, and won't have the funds to make it through hurricane season. And, they're totally, completely missing in action. This is insane. The Biden-Harris administration doesn't care. They've abandoned the people in the Southeast in this country, and they seem to only care about people abroad. And the response from them has been callous. It has been incompetent. It has been the worst hurricane response in our history. David Axelrod sees the suffering all over the Southeast, and he views it as a political win for Democrats. You can't make this up. Take a look.
There's a lot of displacement in western North Carolina. Now, Asheville is a blue dot in that area, but there are a lot of Republican voters
Asheville's
there.
Key.
But those voters in Asheville are they're the kind of voters who will figure out a way to vote. They're upscale, kind of liberal voters, and they're probably going to figure out a way to vote. I'm not sure a bunch of these folks who've had their homes and lives destroyed elsewhere in western North Carolina in the mountains there are going to be as easy to wrangle for the Trump campaign.
Put your pants back on. Happy Monday, everyone. All right, over the weekend, Donald Trump held a rally in Butler, Pennsylvania, the site of the first assassination attempt. He spoke from behind a shield made of plexiglass, the same material they used to build Nancy Pelosi. Not to be outdone, Kamala Harris will join The View, where the Secret Service will have harpoon guns in case the cast gets hungry. You're booing? Get him out of here. On Tuesday, Howard Stern will interview Kamala Harris. She's well prepared, having worked 4 years under a different fart man. I'll take it. After a 7-month narcotics investigation, a large shipment of elephant tranquilizer has been seized on Long Island. Now how will I sleep? Asks one woman.
I thought that was going my way.
A Frontier jet caught fire during a hard landing at the Las Vegas airport. The company quickly responded by announcing they're bringing back the smoking section. In a rare solo interview earlier tonight, Kamala Harris appeared on 60 Minutes. Meanwhile, her husband appeared on A Nanny for 10 minutes. A judge ruled that a Missouri law that forced sex offenders to post no candy signs outside their residence on Halloween is actually unconstitutional. Okay, how about a sign that says sex offender?
Yeah, that's fair.
Problem solved.
Yeah.
And finally, researchers have determined that the act of swallowing is actually helpful to your health. See, I told you, said one man.
Slow. Very slow. Yeah.
All right. So on Saturday, Donald Trump returned to Butler, PA, where roughly 3 months ago, he was almost assassinated by a loser who couldn't make his high school rifle club, but somehow mastered slanted roof technology. It was huge, so huge, the rest of the media had to cover it. First, Trump returns to the scene of his near death and then opens with this.
We love Pennsylvania, and as I was saying, oh, I love that I love that chart.
Yes. Trump's got charts while Biden's got sharts. Elon Musk showed up jumping around like a human embodiment of the First Amendment. All it needed was Hulk Hogan tearing his shirt off or Kid Rock putting a shirt on. Crowd was even bigger this time around, and it's solemn. It was funny and, dare I say it, joyous. Now compare that to the existential prophecies of a future Trump presidency. A threat to democracy, dictatorship, chaos. Was there anything in Butler resembling that? Tens of thousands of people from all over standing together to hear speeches that painted America as a place worth protecting, where safety matters, where borders matter, where American jobs matter, where our leaders would actually put our country first. All things that a Harris presidency would make disappear faster than an erection on Bikini Day at The View.
Sense of the theme here.
That sentence started out so well. Tens of thousands of people, the people that the legacy media demonizes all day long, people who happen to be in the ultimate swing state, by the way. Who do you think, though, our media is going to blame if Trump wins this thing? Just listen to these chuckleheads continue to push violent retribution if Trump wins.
This is an increasingly desperate person who's preparing for civil war.
People right now in the Republican Party are, in fact, actively rooting for and inciting a split, a division in the country.
What he says he intends to do, and when he turns around and says he intends to use SEAL Team 6 or the military within which to round up his critics or his opponents, he intends to do it.
He's putting in place what he needs to disrupt the process and to create enough tension and confusion that you'll have people on the streets protecting and defending him.
So you get the sense there's going to be chaos if Trump wins. That's the sense they want you to have. It's less an election and more of an extortion. And sadly, they may be right. There will be chaos if Trump wins because it'll come from them. What they're saying is, if you win, there will be blood, your blood. It's the mafia saying, nice country you got here. It'd be a shame if something were to happen to it. At least the thugs from Goodfellas had style. Democrat fellas look like this. Think about it. Has Kamala Harris articulated a single original policy point? Sure, she mentioned not taxing tips, which she lifted from Trump like a Cartier watch during a smash and grab. She doesn't bother with policy because she doesn't have to. Because as the woman who babbles on about not going back from her own administration, it's always followed by or else disaster, chaos, a chaos they seem to be guaranteeing. We've seen their chaos in Chicago, New York, San Fran, and Minneapolis. Well, Tim Walz, he missed that one. He was busy fighting ISIS in Iraq with exploding tampons. Now, some of us might be a bit scared, but that's what they want. But you can't let them blackmail or threaten you into a Democrat win, because clearly this is their last sure sign of desperation from a side that doesn't have policy or history or even common sense on their side, only threats. But the good news, like Gerald Nadler's deodorant, it's not working. Tens of thousands of people standing shoulder to shoulder in a field that had the blood of Trump and 3 others in it showed them that. Trump came back like he promised. He didn't let them set the limits. They took their best shot, literally, then he boldly returned to the scene of the crime, like Brian Stelter returning to steal from the CNN fridge. Trump showed up saying, forget it, the threats won't stop us. So it wasn't just about Butler, but the election itself. By gathering all those people in the same field where a weaponized nutcase tried to end Trump's run for president, Trump and thousands of others showed that this election can actually be decided on the merits and not under the threat of the left vowing chaos if they don't get their way. It's funny, the guy they're telling us will end elections and democracy is actually the one doing the most to preserve it. And tens of thousands joined him. They're ready to fight with a prez who has their backs every step of the way. So let the Dems keep telling you that Team Trump will end America as we know it. And if they're talking about the way we've known it the past 4 years, let's hope this is one time they're right.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.